I think that's the key right there. You just said it, which is you got to be around people that are seeing it a little bit differently and that are seeing it the way you want to see it.
Mm-hmm. All right, JG, we're live, brother.
All right.
Welcome to the studio. Good to see you again.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Listen, I'm glad to have you here as well, too. I mean, I think you know that Rain used to be my home, where I used to go and learn about
the home of many legends over the years.
Yeah. And, seeing you on stage and Patrick Francie and obviously, the original founder who was Don Campbell, we all learned so much from Don. And also I learned a lot from you as well, too, right? Yeah. And so it's like, tell me a little bit about that, your journey.
You can't put me in the same level as Don Campbell, that's for sure. But
well, you're getting there. But he was a legend.
Yeah,
for
he was,
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know what I loved about Don was behind the curtain, where you would see the headlines and people would get scared, but then he broke it down to saying, well, hold on a second, here's a headline, but let's actually read the actual article and let's teach you to be a sophisticated real estate investor.
Totally. Well, it was a very, it's fascinating, that whole setup was really great at a time when the internet was just starting. Like, keep in mind, Rain got started in 1993, right?
Right.
The internet wasn't out really, and it certainly wasn't proliferated, that's for sure. Things like YouTube didn't exist. Things like Google didn't exist. Think about that, right? So that's the news. Today, we don't put as much weight into headlines as they did back then. Today, you read a headline and you immediately ask ChatGPT, ask Claude, Google, AI. You can quickly figure out what's going on by yourself. Back then, people didn't have access to that. Real estate investors didn't have access to that.
True.
So as a result, it was way scarier than it is today. I think today, investors have an incredible advantage. Back then, the only advantage you really could have was being a Rain member.
Right. Yeah, that was it. And then all of a sudden, you started seeing a lot of these little small other investment groups pop up. I mean, I was one of them as well, too. Right. But I want to kind of dive into your story. I don't know if you've ever shared your story. At least I've never heard it.
Okay.
But maybe even let's go back into your childhood.
Oh, boy.
What was that like?
Let's go way back.
Yeah. I want to understand, what was that like?
Sure.
Did you have like a good household? Like finances? Like what got you into where you are today?
So that's a great question. I'll try to keep it brief. I've told the story many times, but so essentially, I'm from Timmins, Ontario. If you don't know where Timmins is, it's north. It's 4 hours north of Sudbury.
Yep.
So when I first moved in the GTA, people were like, "Oh, I'm going up north," and I would say, "Oh, where are you going?" And they would say, "Oh, I'm going to Barrie." Or I'm going to Newmarket. And I was like, this is not north. You guys don't know what north is. So I'm from Timmins, Ontario, which is a super small mining town, blue collar town. And that's where I was born and raised. And I left there when I was 18 years old to go to college. I went to college in Sault Ste. Marie, and then I went to university in Ottawa. And then I got on my path, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I grew up very, blue collar, I would say. I wouldn't say middle class. I was raised by my dad. My parents were divorced when I was relatively young. I was raised by my dad. He did everything in his power to provide us with with incredible opportunities, and he did. I played hockey for like 12 years, realized I wasn't making it to the NHL, so I quit hockey and started riding dirt bikes, which is still to this day one of it's my main hobby. Like if you don't catch me at the office or on a podcast, check out the dirt bike trails. It's probably where I'm hanging out. So that's what I like to do for fun. But yeah, it was a very normal childhood, and all the same stuff that most people go through. We didn't talk about money. We had financial problems. We had financial troubles. I wasn't interested at all in business or money or any of that stuff until I was like about 19 years old. When I went to college at 18, and when I went to college, I studied business. I started getting fascinated by the concept of revenue and profit and just that whole concept of business.
Yeah.
So I really kind of dug into that. And then when I went to Ottawa, this is where my story really started, because when I went to the University of Ottawa, I became very disenfranchised with the school system.
Okay.
I was just, by that point, I had already started my business career. I had started my first company with my wife, and I was an entrepreneur. In my mind, I was an entrepreneur. And my gosh, the university system was trying to put me in a box. And the professors that were teaching me were useless. Like literally, they didn't know much about business. They studied it. They studied business, but they didn't practice it.
So you jumped right into entrepreneurship.
Right. I've never had a job. I mean, that's what I tell people. I say publicly, I've never had a job because I've never had a career job. I've worked for Canadian Tire when I was in high school.
So did I.
Yeah, wonderful. There you go. We have that in common.
Yeah.
And one of my earliest mentor, his name's Peter Sear. He still owns a Canadian Tire today. And I almost went down that journey because Peter, I really enjoyed Peter. He was such a great mentor, taught me so many things as a young man, but he wanted me to follow in his footsteps, and he wanted me to own a store, a Canadian Tire store, which I could have went down that path. I decided not to. And I left Canadian Tire when I was 17 or 18. That's the last job I had. So I've never had a job, especially a career job. I've always been an entrepreneur.
Right. So then you've always been an entrepreneur. What would you say, looking back now at that journey, was the most important piece? Because I know you're big on mindset. Is it mindset? Is it skill set? What did you dive into first, or what was it that you really kind of dug into?
Here's where my life changed forever. I went to, and you'll remember this because you and I have this in common. Do you remember Harv Eker? T. Harv Eker?
The
name sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which was huge in 2005, 2006, 2007, leading into The Secret. I read his book when I was 20 years old, and I thought to myself, aha, this is what I've been missing. This is actually what I've been searching for at university, and I'm not finding. So I left university. I took his courses. I went to his conference. I took his courses. That led me to Tony Robbins, which you and I have that in common. But that's where it all started for me. And the minute I understood that, and I understood the concept that your beliefs at that age are not actually your beliefs. They're the beliefs of your parents, or the beliefs of your pastor. They're the beliefs of your hockey coach, or the beliefs of all these other people, but they're not your beliefs. Mm-hmm. When I realized that at 20 years old, I thought to myself, this is what I've been searching for, and I finally found it. And then I went on the journey, that same journey that many people have gone on, the personal development journey, the self-discovery journey, and I never looked back. And I still am on that journey today. You and I exchange that. I still study with Tony Robbins, and that's why I'm in the presence of greatness like Patrick Francie, which is incredible at this stuff as well, and many others. I've been business partners with Bob Proctor. A lot of people don't know that, but in the past, he's passed away now. He was an incredible mentor to me, a business partner to me. I've been business partners with Jerry Robert. I've been business partners with many of these guys over the years. And that's a big part of who I am and why I am and why I've done what I've done.
Yeah. I mean, I think mindset is probably one of the most important pieces. I think people overlook how important that is. And that's really what got me onto this path as well, too, was getting tied into Jim Rohn very early on, and Brian Tracy. And like you said,
I love Brian Tracy.
Yeah,
he's the best.
Eat that frog. And, there's so many great philosophers out there and mentors out there that if you just sit down and take the time to turn your car into a university, it'll completely change your whole entire life.
Have you ever studied Zig Ziglar?
Love Zig Ziglar.
Zig Ziglar is a legend.
Because he's funny as well, too, right?
He's so funny. I used to listen to Zig nonstop in my car. I still do that. That's still the stuff I listen to in my car driving. I still love it.
Yeah. You don't have to listen to always the new stuff. You can go back to the old stuff. The old stuff is classic.
Absolutely.
And incredible. Life-changing. Yeah. Okay, so mindset was really important. You've always been an entrepreneur.
Yep.
I want to kind of maybe dive into why you got into real estate investing, because obviously there was something there that you saw that made you say, hey, I need to do this, because maybe the entrepreneur piece of it, like just owning the business.
Sure.
We know the whole Robert Kiyosaki 4-quadrant, right?
Yeah.
Which you then kind of moved into self-employed.
So here's the funny thing, and I've only said this a couple times publicly, once on Alfonso's podcast.
Yeah.
But I used to be anti-real estate.
Really?
I was anti-real estate from 2005, 6 to 2010, I was anti-real estate.
No, were you anti-real estate because somebody kind of plugged it into you?
Yep.
Same with me.
Yep.
I was supposed to get into it in 2001 and I sat in the sidelines until 2008.
Oh, have you ever done the math on how much money you lost?
I know. I don't want to talk about it.
So I was anti-real estate because I had heard the horror stories of, the hot water tank blew again and created a flood, and the tenant stories and all the horror stories I heard from other people.
Yeah.
And it was just like random people. And it like, and then I look back and I asked myself, did they have any real estate? And they didn't. None of them were any sort of real estate investor, but I heard all those stories. It turned me off. I was anti-real estate because I thought that my business, if I reinvested my capital into my business, I would get a better ROI than I would in real estate. And with those two kind of ideas combined, I became, I say anti-real estate to be a little dramatic, but I certainly wasn't like investing in real estate. In fact, I was like even contemplating, should I even buy a home? Should I even buy a residence, or should I just keep renting? You know, I was a young man at the time. I was in 2006, I would have been like 22 years old.
Okay.
So I contemplated that for a while. I was anti-real estate for a while, and it was Don Campbell who turned me around. Okay. I read his book, and I thought to myself, this makes a lot of sense. Now, the funny thing is that my dad has a very deep real estate past. He's been investing in real estate since the 80s. He's done incredibly well in real estate for himself and for his family. So I had someone there that I loved and trusted and looked up to that had a great experience in real estate. And when I was young, he would try to tell me about it. But, you know, you're a young punk. You're 15 years old. You don't listen to your dad. Why the hell would you listen to your dad? So I used to tell my dad, don't talk to me about this real estate shit. I want nothing to do with it. And then I went on my own little journey. And then it wasn't until I was about 25 years old that it was 2010. So I'd been 26 years old. Okay. And I said to myself, you know what? Let's reconsider this real estate. I read Don's book and I said, okay, I need to consider this. And then what I did was I looked around, and a lot of the greats, what I realized, and I don't tell this, I've actually never shared this part of the story. So this is breaking news right here on your podcast, Gary. But I looked around, and some of the greats out there, and I studied them, the Zig Ziglars of the world and the Bob Proctor's. I mean, I don't want to name drop. It doesn't matter. Like a lot of these legends that made a ton of money. And of course, I don't have all their financial details. Most of them didn't have a lot of wealth. And if you look into them a little bit deeper than what's on the internet, you figure out, these guys have all made millions, some of them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they really don't have a whole lot in their later years, because they never invested.
Right.
And if there's any one skill that I kind of have that I'm quite good at, is I can see patterns in other people, and I could kind of say, hey, listen, you have to look at this a little differently, and you have to do something a little different here. And I kind of can talk to myself this way. So I saw this in other people that I truly cherish. And I thought to myself, man, these people should have millions of dollars of assets. They should be generating passive income. They should be living, they shouldn't, and a lot of them didn't. And I got to peek behind the curtain, so to speak. And I noticed that, and I thought to myself, okay, I have to do things differently. And real estate was that answer.
Right.
Because I knew I would be good at making money. I figured that out relatively young. I was always good at making money. And then I just had to figure out, okay, how do we invest that money wisely?
Right. And because I think sometimes, what ends up happening with most people is they're trying to save money, and you can't save your way to wealth.
That's right.
Right. Because, once you don't have, well, right now you obviously understand printing money, and it's not backed by anything. And when you've got a fiat currency and they can print it whenever they want, right, you are losing purchasing power. And so when you start seeing inflation, that's what's happening. It's taking away from what you're able to purchase, and keeping that money under the mattress, or keeping that money in the bank account. That's not doing it. And so you figured it out at an early age that you need to actually invest this money into something that is going to outpace inflation. I
didn't even know that. I didn't even know that back then. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have a clue what inflation was back then. I mean, I don't know about you, but We all clued into what inflation was real clearly in 2021, 2022 when it started happening. That's when it became very clear for all of us.
Right.
I understood the concept of inflation. I studied the concept of inflation in my economics class in University of Ottawa. But let me tell you, until you experience it, you don't understand it till you experience it, right?
Right.
So, but back then, Gary, I can't tell you that I was thinking about outpacing inflation. It was just about like, I'm going to make money. Where am I going to reinvest that money in order to make more money, in order to protect myself so that if something happens, we're protected here? And the answer was real estate.
Got it. So somebody's listening to this podcast right now, right? And we obviously know that during that peak back in from 2020 to 2022, a lot of people wanted to get into real estate investing. My barber wanted to get into real estate investing. Everybody wanted to get into real estate investing. And that's when you've got to be very cautious, because this is not a game for everybody. You know, when I first got into it, you know, I think it was maybe 5% of the population maybe had one investment property. Then when you got down to got to 2 or 3, you're getting down to 1% or 2% of the population, right? But somebody listening to it today and they're listening to YouTube videos or they're watching, you know, whatever's out there, and they're like, whoa, we should not get into real estate investing. What would you say to them? Or is now even a good time to get into it? And where are things in the market that you're seeing?
So I would say now is the best time to get into it, because, you know, for those that have played the game for a while, you realize, you see these cycles, and you see when your barber and your Uber driver and when all these people are talking about real estate, that's when you should be kind of concerned and you should be looking at not exiting, but that's when you should be really taking some chips off the table, so to speak. Yeah. Whereas right now, when it's going tough for everybody, man, there's so many great deals right now. And I've had the pleasure of going through these cycles, and I could see today the deals that would have looked like absolute rock star deals just 2 years ago, 18 months ago. And today people are like, oh no, we can't look at that. So from a timing perspective, you and I both subscribe to the same philosophy, which is it's never about timing the market. It's always about time in the market. Right. So there's never a bad time to buy real estate, but there is better times to buy real estate. And I think from my perspective, we're in one of those times right now. But to be successful in real estate, you have to have you have to be looking at the right strategy at the right time in the right market. And because not all strategies do the same. Do well at the same time. And, you know, you have to educate yourself. That's what RAIN is all about. That's what Genius is all about. That's what these clubs are all about. That's what you do. That's what it's all about, is to educate yourself. And if you get a little bit of that education, man, you could short circuit so many errors and make your life so much better.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, you know, throughout my investing career, like, you do have to adapt, and you've got to change as well too, right? Every time, I remember when I was sending out my newsletter, I was like, okay, here's a new government change, or here's a new policies coming, and it's not going to be the same. It's not, and you're right, it's not going to continue to be the same. But you got to know how to pivot. You got to know how to adapt, and it's no different than today. And I agree with you. I think now is such a great time. Yeah. When people are fearful, you know, you know the saying, right? People are fearful, be greedy. When people are greedy, be fearful. And we're in that time right now where people are fearful, and this is a great time now. If you get set up with the right people, you get the right team to be able to go out there and buy the right properties that are going to cash flow.
That's the difference.
Not speculate.
That's the difference.
Not just worrying about appreciation. Appreciation, like we know, is just icing on the cake.
That's right. But I think what people have to overcome is they look at you, Gary, and they say, well, of course Gary's saying that. Gary sells real estate. Mm-hmm. Of course, JG says that. He manages real estate and he owns a bunch of real estate. Of course, he's just, you know, we're just being optimistic. Well, okay, that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is maybe we've seen this before. You know, Gary, you missed. When did you start?
2008.
I think that was a pretty tough time for real estate in general. Most people were losing their minds in real estate in 2008. Did you buy at the peak or at the bottom?
I bought at the when it was coming down.
You're buying on the way down, right? And I'm sure that was a pretty. I didn't. I missed that whole wave of real estate because I was in my anti-real estate phase there. But would you say that you know, are you grateful today that you bought when it appeared that you were crazy at the time? I'm sure.
Of course I am, right? But also too, I mean, when I was at work, because I had a 9-to-5 at the time, people were like, are you crazy?
Right?
Like, it's going to continue to keep crashing. You're going to lose everything. And then before you know, by 2014, I had multiple properties. I mean, we were like almost like 20 doors. You know, I was like, but then all of a sudden it took off. when people kept saying it was going to go down, it just took off.
Yeah.
But I was buying for cash flow. I didn't care if it continued to go down. I did, but also too, I had to educate myself, and that's where now I was going to these investment clubs like Rockstar Real Estate and and Rain to get the education, to be around people that were where I wanted to be, not where I was.
Well, I think that's the key right there. You just said it, which is you've got to be around people that are seeing it a little bit differently and that are seeing it the way you want to see it. Mm-hmm. So, think about it. And it's such a great, we know and we've heard anecdotally, you are the sum or the average of the 5 closest people to you, right? Yep. So think about that. Who are you spending most of your time with? And you're going to be the average of those 5 people. So take those 5 people, put them on paper. You can rank them any way you want. And by the way, that doesn't only go from a assets and a money perspective and an income perspective and all that stuff. It also goes from a kindness perspective, family perspective, lifestyle perspective, like all those perspectives. You can rank those people, take the average, and that's essentially what you're hanging out with. What Rain did and Rockstar and Wealth Genius, you're going to Expand, which is coming up in a couple weeks, and May 1st, 2nd, 3rd. When you go to rooms like that, you're exposing yourself to a whole new layer of people, and it's fascinating. And if you look at that, and if you integrate some of those people into your life, you're going to rise to that average, which is going to be a new average.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. So there are things that are happening right now in the market. The government's trying to pump life into this market.
Yes, it is.
Let's touch on what they're doing right now. I believe they just came up with an $8.8 billion package, where now it's between the federal government and the provincial government to cut development charges and also cut HST.
That's right.
Too, right? Touch on that, and what are your thoughts on that? Is that actually going to revive the market?
Is it going to revive the market? No. And I could explain why that is. Is it a good thing? Yes, for sure it's a good thing. I mean, they're anytime, both of those things are taxes. Development charges are taxes. They dress them up and they call them development charges, but it's still a tax. Yeah. And anytime you're taking taxes out of a market, it's a good thing in my view. And it's going to accelerate things, which is fantastic. Right now, we are at some of the lowest pre-built and new build numbers, condos excluded, because condos are having a terrible time here in the GTA as well as in Vancouver. But for single family homes, we're at some of the lowest numbers we've ever seen before. And that's part of what they're trying to pump up. They want to bring developers back to the table. The problem is that it's not up to them, it's up to the lenders. Mm-hmm. And right now we're in a massive, massive, massive lending crisis. Not any other crisis. If the lenders got back to the table and started lending on real estate again and making it easier for developers like me to get back in the game, the market would, because the deals are there. The land is there. The deals are there. The opportunities are there, but the financing's not there right now.
Really?
And 100%.
Okay. So that's where the issue is right now.
That's where the issue is. This is a lending crisis and what I call a liquidity crisis, much more than anything else. And in my view, it's because of all the geopolitical stuff that's happening. The lenders are terrified of the big renewal wave that's coming in 2026, 2027. Yeah. So they've pumped the brakes. And I think they're going to be pumping the brakes until mid to late 2027. We've got another year of this, in my opinion. I think what the government has done is a fantastic thing. I think it will have a positive effect once the liquidity crisis passes us.
Right. Now, obviously, that is to revive, to get the developers out there digging again.
Sure.
But do we have a supply issue? I mean, we've got a lot of supply out there right now. Is it more of a forecast of like, look, because they're not digging,
you're going to have a massive 100%. You're going to
big issues.
You're going to have a massive housing crisis in 3 to 5 years. The numbers right now in terms of new builds are off the chart low. Yeah. They've never been this low in, I don't know.
35 years.
Exactly. Decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
That all shows up in the market in a couple of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those houses that got to hit the market in order to provide, because it's, you, Gary, deal in the resale market, and as do most realtors deal in the resale market. Well, the new build market gives room to the resale market to run. And that turnover of real estate is critical. It's going to all lock up in a couple of years here, and it's going to get and you're going to just see this massive wave of, I was going to say inflation. I don't want to scare people, but this massive uptick in property prices in a couple of years because there's not going to be that supply. And when there's limited supply and lots of demand, what happens to prices? Prices go up.
Yeah. And I think people, what they've got to understand as well too, is that, when you start digging, it takes time for that to even come
100%.
To market. You're talking years to go through permits and to go through everything you need to do to get it to the finish line.
And that's the one thing the government hasn't done. The government, so there's three issues. Well, there's many more than that, but there's three primary issues with building in Canada. Being a developer, being a builder, I mean, I'm very in tune with these three issues. The first one is the taxes on all this stuff is incredible.
Yep.
It is unbelievable how expensive it is to build in Canada. And they've now taken some of that off. Okay, the HST, fantastic. That helps the consumer. The development charges, fantastic. That helps the builders and gives us a little bit of breathing room so we can bring these properties to market. But the third thing, and probably the most important thing, is the regulations. They just have made it so difficult. And it takes the average development somewhere between 7 to 10 years just to be in a position to build. So you buy a piece of land and say you're going to build more than one home. You're trying to do a small subdivision. You're trying to build a little townhome, little townhouse complex, or whatever the case may be, right? And I do this all the time. And it's going to take you 7 to 10 years to be in a position to get building permits. Then you got to get building permits. Then you got to pay all those taxes we're talking about. Then you got to bring them to market.
Right. Yeah. So it's a long time.
It takes a long time.
Now, with these new changes that are happening, this is also deflationary as well, too, would you not say? Deflationary from the standpoint of now, I'm going to go, instead of going resale, I might go to a new build, maybe inventory home.
Sure.
Now they were going for $700,000. They take the HST off of it.
Wonderful.
Now it goes down to 6 and change.
I totally agree.
Right. So
if there were some, but there's none. We're not building.
Yeah.
So it would have that effect if there was some supply on the market.
But it also hits the inventory homes as well, too. So the inventory homes that are available right now, they can lower those prices.
That's correct. Yeah. As of April 1st. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. But that's all going to get absorbed relatively quickly. And like I said, this housing crisis, which, by the way, have you noticed is not talked about anymore?
What's up?
The housing crisis, like this, the narrative of the housing crisis, which was massive 24 months ago. You don't see that in the newspaper anymore. You don't see that headline anymore. So then, you're going to see it in 2 to 3 years. Mark my words.
Yeah, I agree with that. So then what would you say the issue is right now then? Is it an affordability crisis?
Liquidity crisis.
Liquidity. You don't think it's affordability?
No, I think they're much more. Well, I think we have an economic problem. I think that our economy is way softer than what the numbers show on paper. And I think that there's not so much, like, the price of real estate has come down quite a bit in terms of the price off the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The rates are in a way better spot. I mean, I have many mortgages under 4% now, 3.8, 3.9, 3.95.
Yeah.
I mean, those are okay rates. Nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't need rates at 2% to buy a house.
Yeah. And that was the issue. It allowed too many people to get into the
100%.
market, and they got crushed because they were speculators. They didn't really understand how the game of real estate investing worked.
Exactly. And now that's what's created. So that the fact that rates went that low, the fact that it pushed up the market that high is actually what's creating the liquidity crisis now, because all that debt is rolling over in the market as we speak right now. And that's going to last until mid-2027. And as that debt rolls over, the banks are deathly afraid that there's going to be too many delinquencies.
Yeah.
And by the way, the delinquencies in Canada are extremely low, especially when you compare it to other countries, but they're still double what they were 2 years ago. So that scares the banks.
For sure. So listen, JG, great conversation so far. I want to dive into, what you're doing with yourself, your investors, but we'll do that on the next show. So just stay tuned, and we'll be right back.